Time to get classy, movies. That's an Anchorman reference, everybody. Um, Incongruous with our talk about silent cinema, perhaps, but totally congruous with what's going on in film history. So we've just been talking about the earliest period of films and how people saw things first at a sideshow, at the carnival, and then in Nickelodeons. Well, as the industry became more of an industry and less of a bunch of haphazard different companies working, there was a constant shift within the industry to cultivate a more middle class audience who could spend more money on movies. And this meant that both in the advertising and marketing of films, as well as their production and their exhibition, what kind of films were made and where people saw them, there was a concerted effort to make cinema a respectable art form, or should I say, a respectable popular entertainment, really. So this meant, amongst other things, longer films, fancier theaters, and concerns about content. What was the kind of content that would appeal to this audience that was imagined to be more somehow refined, dignified, and not as easily entertained as the previous audiences of working class people in the city. So for us, there's a real key transformative moment from simple comic moments, one joke films, to comedy. And also, what kind of comedy? What are we going to laugh at? This guy, this is one of the things we're going to laugh at, Charlie Chaplin. And he is a really interesting figure in many different ways, and I know you're going to enjoy watching his film, The Gold Rush. I think you will, anyway. But he is, of course, a very important figure, both as a performer and a director, producer of comedies, both in the silent era and into the sound era as well. So I want to just briefly talk about some very basic narrative elements, some narrative terms that we need to be able to have to talk about the expanded narratives that we're going to be watching. So rather than having just a simple basic setup or premise that we saw in this kind of one joke films, in these longer narratives, it's vital that we have characters and ongoing conflict. And this means that there's generally going to be some identifiable protagonist who has an objective, something that they're trying to achieve. And then, in order to generate conflict, there are going to be a series of obstacles that get in that protagonist's way, things that keep them from achieving their objective. Because in order to sustain a longer narrative, there has to be ongoing conflict. You can get through an extremely short film with just one joke and not a lot of conflict. But if you're going to have a whole bunch of funny things, you're going to need some conflict. So even in a film that's a comedy, you've got to have some kind of conflict. Okay. So this is the larger narrative that's going on in terms of the film industry and what's happening with movies. But as I said before, the other thing to think about is what different kinds of comedy are produced from these conflicts. What is the kind of laughter that's being generated? And is that in line with the kind of audiences that the filmmakers or the studios are seeking to develop? So you're going to watch The Gold Rush. And you can watch, there's a couple different versions of this film because it was first produced during the silent era, and then it was re-released with added narration by Charlie Chaplin. I think it was early 40s maybe when he did that. And I have embedded the version that has the sound narration just because I really like it. I think it's really funny. And it provides another element of what we might call montage, the way that in which the sound and the image work together. There's a lot of moments when the narration conflicts with what we're seeing on screen, and that's funny, I think. But without giving anything away, really, I just want to tell you ahead of time, of course, as you're watching this, think about the different kinds of conflict that motivate and structure the various different comic moments in the film. Because this is first and foremost a comedy picture. It has a narrative, but it also makes a lot of sense as just a series of different little comic scenes more than anything else, I think. And as you watch this, keep in mind those different varieties of laughter, superiority, incongruency, and relief. His character, the tramp, is so interesting both for being empathetic. It kind of complicates our idea of just laughing at the clown as a kind of superiority. It's much more is going on than that. So watch the Gold Rush on Canopy. You might need to sign in with your credentials again through this different service in order to be able to watch that video, but please do that. You can also find it a lot of places because I don't think it's copyrighted anymore. You may even be able to find it on YouTube, but you certainly, as a TAMU-CC student, can log into Canopy, and they have the Criterion Collection version of it, so it's really nice. So I recommend you watch that one that is embedded there. Unless you don't want narration, if you want a pure silent film version, then you can easily find the version that doesn't have the sound on Canopy as well.